Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. We are three real brothers and missing one backyard brother today. Yancey is not feeling well today. It's going around. I don't know if it's going around where you are, but Colorado for sure. I had it last week, and Ivy and I keep passing a cold back and forth. And seems like Yancey's dealing with the same kind of thing south of me. So it's going all around. So we'll manage with the OG Backyard Brothers and go from there. So today we're going to finish the rest of the NBA midseason report. But before we get there, I have a memory this week, and I'm going to preface this memory by saying a couple of things. um, for those who know me, I have two big passions in my life. Uh, those being sports and movies. I've followed sports since I've been, I think 1997 was the real time I really started getting into, maybe 96, 97 with John Stockton, the Utah Jazz. And I remember that was the first Super Bowl I watched as well when the Denver Broncos beat the Green Bay Packers, uh, being the first Super Bowl I watched. So movies, maybe a lot longer, maybe around the same time, really. I love movies. I love collecting movies. I love the stories that movies can share and the way that they make us feel when watching them. It's just another art form. It's a way uh, to influence the way people feel and tell stories, whether they be real, whether they be fictional, but they have the power to change people. They have the power to influence people, and they have the power to just flat out entertain people. And they can do all three at the same time. And so um, I chose movies because the Oscars are right around the corner. And if anyone also knows me, the the Oscars are my second Super Bowl. I love the Oscars. I love watching the Oscars. I love preparing for the Oscars. By preparing, I mean I'm well on my way to watching every single nominated film this year. Um, I have three more left. And so I love preparing for them. I love watching them. And so the Oscars are right around the corner. I wanted to do a movie with one. Um, a movie memory. And obviously, we're a sports podcast, and so I wanted to talk about sports movies in particular, and the way that watching a particular sports movie really made you feel in the moment, um, or after watching one, and why. And so I chose a movie. Um, I uh, I started playing football for the first time when I was 11 years old, organized football. Uh, um, I played on a peewee team in Salt Lake City when I was 11 years old. It was called the Peewee Central or the Peewee Brighton Bears. Brighton Bengals. That's what they were, and I played every position. They were trying to figure out where I fit. I started quarterback at first, and then I couldn't take the handoffs, and so they switched me to safety. They switched me to cornerback, wide receiver. I even played on the offensive and defensive lines, just trying to figure out where I fit. That's not part of the story. Anyway, what is part of the story is as a team, our coaches decided that we should go see a film. Uh, Especially considering there was a football movie out in theaters. So I went. This is going to date me, maybe, but I went with my football team to go see Remember the Titans in the theaters when I was 11 years old. Um, and we sat all in the front row. Our entire team took that whole front area, like the three or four rows of seats that are in the front of the theater. Our whole team took that whole thing, and we're watching the movie. And I'm like staring up at the screen this high because I'm right in the front row. But so I saw Remember the Titans in the theaters, and the way that movie made me feel, both from a football perspective as well as the obvious important lessons it has to teach. Um, a historical perspective. I felt like I could run through a brick wall after watching that movie from a football perspective. I was ready to go hit people. I was ready to go just tackle people and make these huge plays because it gets you those great feelings of a football player. And then obviously at 11 years old, you don't fully comprehend the important messages that it's teaching. I've seen it several times since, but obviously the historical importance of ending racism, of equal rights, of civil rights, and things like that that are very very important today. You see the back of helmets still in the NFL that say "End Racism" and things like that. And obviously that came back a few years ago when certain things happened in our society. But there's there's a lot of importance to that film, both from a film perspective and a historical perspective, and just teaching messages that are important for everyone to learn today. And so I wanted to share that and also reiterate that my wife actually met the two coaches in real life at an assembly that happened at her school in Idaho. They came and talked about civil rights during the Martin Luther King weekend, and she met and got an autograph from both Coach Boone and Coach Yost. And she remembers the interaction she had with those two coaches. Coach Boone looked at her and said, "How old are you?" Uh, and she said, 14. She says, "You look like you're 10." And that was what she remembers. So I apologize for that being a little longer than normal, but I want to hear your thoughts. It doesn't have to be Remember the Titans. It can be whatever movie really influenced you or impacted you the first time you saw it.
I guess first off, do we? I know Yancey had offline told us about something. Do we want to share that first, or do we want to?
Yeah. Yancey talked about Friday Night Lights being an impactful movie to him. He said both the way that I'm going to read it because I'm trying to talk about it right now. Uh, he said he loves the way that they portray the pain of football, both the pain of losing as well as the pain of just physical pain of the sport itself, how physical it can be. And he particularly pointed out the Booby Miles story, the one where I believe at the beginning he tears an ACL and then has to wait throughout the entire movie to and learn how to cheer on his team from the sideline, and then come back and make an important addition later on in the season.
Yeah. The reason why I want to do that is actually mine is also Friday Night Lights. Um, the first thing I want to say though is there are so many sports movies out there that have had an impact on me. And that's probably the same with everyone. Each one, as you said yourself, Scott, can tell a story in a different way and can get a different story across. I know we've mentioned this before on podcast probably a year ago, but it's almost never about the actual sport. It's always about something else going on. But sports is a vehicle to get that story to people. So I wanted to say that first. But Friday Night Lights is personally it impacted me. I don't even remember when the first time I watched it. I was probably 13 or 14. I don't know. Um, Going along the same lines as Yancey, the brutality of football is portrayed really really well. The emotion behind the game of football, the desire to win, the pain of losing, you know, the pain of injury. I know he tore his Boobie Miles tore his ACL twice in the movie. The first time he tore it, he came back like I think halfway through the season or at the end of the season or something like that. Tore it again, and that's when his career was over. You know, he had a he was going to go on and play college football. It was for sure. But then this happens, and he was done. Um, and Billy Bob Thornton as I don't remember the name of the coach, the character, but the coach. Um, he did a fantastic job of giving that desire to the team. And it always impacted me the story of, and I'm not going to get the names, but Tim McGraw's in the movie. You know, he plays the dad of one of he's like the fullback or something. Um, and you see that down in Texas, football is religion essentially. That's how he expected his son to be good at football, and it was very abusive in a way, and just I don't know. I guess I'm rambling. So anyway, the movie just had a huge impact on me. It made me want to play football. It's made me love football ever since. And just the brutality of it is a different story.
Yeah, good comments. To comment on Remember the Titans first, it's that is I don't know how you can argue a better football movie in that things. There's definitely other movies that can compete, but it's hard to place anything above that. And then with Friday Night Lights, yeah, that pain and that emotion and all that, and it's interesting thinking about the impact that it has on people. And maybe I'm taking this a little bit of a different way, but I guess kind of on the lighthearted. So I never played organized sports, just plenty of stuff in the backyard and league and things like that. And I know you two played a little bit in high school, and Scott, your experience with peewee. But with talking to friends, they'd always say, I watched that movie. I felt like I could run through the brick wall, especially when Coach Yost is, I don't want them to gain another yard. Right. And then all my friends says, my coaches never did that. They just calmly explained what to do. They just said, okay, here's the plan. Go do this, go do that. Don't. Yeah. And it was calm. It was like, where was all that emotion and all of that? And so I thought that's an interesting mirroring that, for the most part, football is better when you're calm about it. Any sport is better when you approach it calmly. And then, commenting on the Friday Night Lights, it's, again, maybe taking this a different way. There have been plenty of, whether it's coaches, um, parents especially, that take it to the extreme about doing things. We can name several college coaches that have not only been fired, but some have even gone to jail for the way that they've treated athletes. Whether you're talking about coaches like Urban Meyer, and others that had some serious consequences because of the intensity that they brought it. Some of which has been raised in the culture of this of movies and other things like that. I'm not trying to rain on the parade, but understanding that, hey, this is a fantastic emotional thing, but it's also a dramatization, and making sure that we understand that. And so absolutely love those movies. The movie that I would add, my favorite sports movie, is The Sandlot.
Mhm.
And like you said, not really about sports, but this nostalgia of what it's like to be a kid, and watching it as a first time, it's like, oh, this is so fun. But then watching it again, as an adult, it's like, it's so fun to be a kid. I miss being a kid, and that's the kind of nostalgia that a movie like The Sandlot gives to me. Is it's so fun to be a kid.
Yeah.
I I think that I love that. Just real quick, The Sandlot is like the official movie of backyard sports. You know what I'm talking about? It's like for our podcast, even Sandlot is just the thing.
hmm I would agree with that. Yeah. Great comments from everyone, and Dustin, I can give you examples, not right now, but offline, of when I saw that kind of emotion from my coaches on the sideline too. So it's not a never occurring thing. I remember Coach Owen, in particular, my head coach in Indiana, yelling so crazily at the referee for making a bad call that our running back ran about a 70-yard touchdown, and a referee who actually turned out to be a family friend of ours, Joel Schaefer's dad, who was the referee there. Uh, just yelling at him from across the sideline about how he made a bad call, and other things that that just burned into my memory. That, okay, that's a high school coach that shouldn't be using the words that he's using right now. So anyway, things like that. So they happen for sure. But I loved all of your comments. So okay, next up, excuse me. We're going to continue with the NBA midseason report. We did 4 of the 6 divisions, so we're on to the Pacific Division, starting with the Golden State Warriors. So obviously, the Warriors have not had the season that they would like to have at this point. They keep kind of going back and forth between the Jazz for that last 10th spot in the Western Conference. That's not something the Warriors are used to having to fight. I think right now they're in ninth, but so
Yeah.
they've kind of
Ninth.
climbed that board a little bit. But obviously they have some aging superstars. Although Stephen Curry doesn't show it, maybe Klay Thompson does a little bit. Draymond Green has had his issues being suspended for quite a piece of the season. And just is this a team that whose dynasty is over, or is this like the Chiefs, for example, that this whole regular season looks like it's not really going to happen, and then they get to the playoffs, and this is a team that knows how to play in the playoffs, and suddenly they're a threat again. Which one is it?
It's you can't rule Stephen Curry out once he gets to the playoffs. It's he has reached legend status the same way that LeBron James has. Absolutely. And once you get to the playoffs, the finals are always a possibility. And so with them being in the play, and they're just as dangerous as whatever once they get there. But yeah, this is a team that's struggled with culture, and maybe forgive some controversial comments here, but I don't think that the problem is Draymond Green, because Draymond Green has been doing that stuff forever. I mean, what he's done this season is absolutely no different than what he's done the last 15 years. And so for it to all of a sudden make a change in year 15, that doesn't make sense from a cultural change. I think having too many cooks in the kitchen, especially with the addition of Chris Paul, has hurt the culture, and that they've struggled to find leadership. I think you can see that a lot in Andrew Wiggins' numbers. That last season he was 17 to 18 points a game, and now he's 12 points a game. And they've just struggled to make him efficient and struggled to keep him going. And I think it's because the offense has changed a lot with Chris Paul's addition. Chris Paul's obviously a great player and a great culture aspect there in the locker room, but they've had trouble figuring out how to fit him into the offense, because Golden State has been such a fast-paced, 7 seconds or less offense, and Chris Paul is the half-court wizard, and so they've had struggle figuring that out. You can see that their offense is doing good, though. I mean, they're 6th in points, 4th in assists in the league, and so their offense is doing fine. They're in the bottom half of defense, but overall, they're a 500 team, which is just not good enough in the West. And so this is a team that's dangerous on offense, but just can't figure out how to win the games that are close.
Yeah, and they just locked up Steve Kerr for another few years. Gave him, I think, a 2 or 3 year extension. So that culture's there to stay for a while, at least.
Yeah. So he's not Kerr's not an issue, I don't think. So yeah, Kerr's obviously fantastic and Hall of Fame coach.
I think really for the Warriors, my question to the expert here, Dustin, we've already established who Steph Curry is and that he's a legend, best player on the team. We've also, and as Scott mentioned this, that Klay Thompson might be showing his age a little bit. We know it's kind of a star-studded roster, at least it used to be, but we know it's kind of star-studded. Who would you say is the second best player on this team currently that they can look to aid after Steph Curry?
That's a difficult question to answer. I mean, right at this present state and time, it'd be Jonathan Kuminga. That's who the second best player on the team is right now, is Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, Klay Thompson, Chris Paul, Andrew Wiggins all have the broader career that puts them above Kuminga in the whole, who would win one-on-one? If you're talking who's gonna do better on the practice court, then Kuminga's down the list. But right now he's making the biggest impact outside of those, while everybody else is kind of trying to figure out how to play in this team.
A good comment. I like it. Also with Klay Thompson, I think he's never fully recovered from those 2 straight injuries. He tore an ACL and then he tore an Achilles, or vice versa. I can't remember which one happened, but I mean, obviously he's still scoring 20 points a game, but he's just not the same player since those 2 injuries.
Yeah, some players' age just catches them a little bit differently. There's some players where staying efficient through your age is a skill that you can see in a player like Stephen Curry or LeBron James, and other players it's just harder to keep up with. And I'm not knocking on Klay Thompson because he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer, but it's just been an off year for him.
Yeah. Okay. Second team in that division is the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, we talked very briefly, like back at the beginning of the season when James Harden was traded over to the Clippers. We all kind of laughed at the struggles that the Clippers were having with James Harden. I think they had lost their first 6 games, I think, with James Harden on the roster, and we said, you know. Maybe they're not really cut out for that, and James Harden's a toxic environment. I think you can shove all that down the toilet at this point because the Clippers are one of the best teams in the NBA at this point.
Yeah.
They're 37-19. They have it all together, and maybe that was the right move after all. Dustin?
Yeah, absolutely. You said, we all laughed, and it's kind of like a who's laughing now because, Clippers are absolutely proved it. Some comments here is you said they lost 6 in a row. Their first 15 games or so, they went after the trade, they went 5-9, right? It was abysmal. Since then, they've gone 29-9. I mean, they went from a 30% win rate to a 70% win rate once they figured out that. And some really neat keys. We've talked about Harden and toxicity and how he's way too ball dominant. He's the third leading scorer on the team, and I think that's what's helping him. He's averaging 17 and 8. 17 points, 8 assists. Those 8 assists are what's really helping the team be successful, is that he's not being ball dominant like he has on other teams and letting Kawhi and PG kind of get the points and run the offense that way. And he being a really strong support, still putting in 17 points a game, which is great. But yeah, you have 4 Hall of Famers on the same team, 2 MVPs, couple finals MVPs on the same team. The Clippers are absolutely dangerous and on my short list of Western Conference champions.
And we had talked about at the beginning of the season as well that seeing Paul George and Kawhi Leonard together on the same field, on the same court for a while would be important. Paul George is out right now with an injury, but I mean, for the most part, they've stayed relatively healthy. It's just Paul George is dealing with an injury right now that's kind of day to day, but it seems completely possible, unless some tragic thing happens, to get all 4 of those guys healthy at the same time going into the playoffs, which, like you said, Dustin, is bad news for anyone they're playing.
Yeah, if they can stay healthy, until April, and then April, May, and June, then yeah, seeing them playing in June is absolutely possible.
So we mentioned that we kind of laughed at first when they had made the trade with James Harden. And I think you briefly mentioned this, Dustin, already, but my question is, what changed? What changed for them to be able to get to the point that they are? Is it that you mentioned that Harden is the third leading scorer on the team? That suggests to me that they figured out communication. They're passing the ball around. Is that what changed, or is there something else behind it?
I think that we're not giving Ty Lue enough credit here. I mean, he's a fantastic coach. He has the championship under the belt when he was with the Cavs. He's a fantastic coach, and I think that he lets the players figure it out, but also he's tried to say, hey, let's get the right culture in place. We all know what the right answer is, so let's get the right culture in place and play the right way. And then I think that the players on this team are different enough in their play styles that it complements really well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, the other LA team, the Los Angeles Lakers. Whatever we think, they're kind of where we thought they would be. uh, a team that's going to sneak into the play-in and then do exactly what they did last year, which is kind of explode out of the gates, win some games, and be a threat to those top 4 teams in the West. Is that still what we're thinking, even though they're right around 500 and 10th place in the West, or is there something different going on?
You know, throughout the last 20 years, you know, it's there's been a lot of criticism against LeBron James and his teams and all of that. And the thing is he's just got to get to the playoffs. It doesn't matter what spot he gets in. If he's there, the finals are his to take. That's proven true for, 12 out of the 20 years of his career, something like that. 13 out of the 20 years of his career is, if I get to the playoffs, I'm going to get in the finals. And it's insane to think about that kind of statistic. And so to think about that, but the Lakers do have some problems. LeBron is absolutely not one of them. He's 39 years old and he's averaging 25, 7, and 8. I mean, he's averaging MVP caliber numbers in his 20th year. Other players that have played, not very many players have played 20 years, and he's already scored more than double the amount of points in his 20th year than those other players scored in their entire 20th season. I mean, he's absolutely, we haven't seen this type of longevity in any way. And so it's incredible that he's about to score 40,000 points on his career.
Yeah.
So, but the problem with the Lakers is, so they're 31-28, close to 500. But they're positive 500, but their point differential is negative. And so somehow they have a plus 500, but they're minus 500 in their offense versus defensive rating. And so it means the games that they're winning, they're barely winning, and the games they're losing big. And that's a very interesting. You don't see that very often, a negative point differential for a winning team.
Yeah. I was just going to mention the company that LeBron James. You could say LeBron James is in a class of his own, right? In a lot of ways, but the class that he is in, with players who have played 20 or more seasons, include Kobe Bryant, who played 20 years. Dirk Nowitzki played 21. John Stockton played 23, I think. 22.
I might have been
21.
18. Might have been 18.
You don't think it was 20?
I don't think so.
I think he played 20. I'll look it up later. Okay.
I think he was drafted in 84 and retired in 2003.
Okay, 19. All right. So, yeah, Nowitzki, Kobe, Robert Parrish.
Vince Carter, Dirk Nowitzki, yeah. Those guys. Kevin Garnett played 20 years.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
But none of them scored more than like 600 points in their 20th season, and LeBron's already at like 1,400 points in his 20th season.
Okay.
So here's my question for you. So this might be a controversial question, kind of, but we still hear people mentioning LeBron James in the same conversation as Michael Jordan, or a lot of other names that you just mentioned, Scott, or Wilt Chamberlain, all these great names. What else can LeBron James do in his career to no longer have to be in that kind of conversation? At that point, it just, LeBron James is the greatest, and everyone can agree on it. What else can he do in his career?
He can't do anything.
Opinions are like buttholes. Everyone has one, and they all stink, right? It's just that's the way it is. I mean, to say that LeBron has had the greatest NBA career of all time, you can call it an opinion, or you can call it fact. If you're talking about NBA career, like, it's hard to argue with that. And the only way to put those two one-on-one in their prime is to do so in a video game. And how do you chalk that up in any way that isn't biased in some way? And so, and plus, basketball is not a one-on-one sport, and so it's useless to compare them. I mean, who's better, Joe Namath or Patrick Mahomes? Why would you compare them? Who's better? You can compare maybe Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, but who's better, Tom Brady or Joe Montana? How do you compare them? They're totally different areas, totally different things. It's not even apples to oranges. It's coconuts to Volkswagens.
Yeah. Good response. I like it. Okay. Phoenix Suns. Right now they're sixth in the West, 34-24, hanging right about where I think most of us thought that they would be. Uh, but what's going on in Phoenix?
Yeah, this is a team that's very middle of the pack, which is kind of surprising with the star power they have in Beal, Booker, and Durant. But just middle of the pack in all categories, just not doing anything super special. Kevin Durant is obviously extremely special. He's become a 50-40-90 machine. He's done it twice, and he's closing in on third. He's currently at a 53-42 and 86. And so if he can push his free throws a little bit more through the rest of the season, he could get to 50-40-90 for a third season in his career, which is just insane to think about. There's only been one player to do it more than 3 times. And so he's obviously one of the greatest and most efficient scorers, and so he's a bright spot there. But this is a team that I predicted would kind of struggle in certain aspects. And they're just middle of the pack in everything, but it's still good enough to be in the top half of the West.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think I have anything to add, really. I mean, Bradley Beal hasn't been quite the addition that everyone thought he would be. He is the third member of the big three, but it's just not. He was the guy in Washington, and so everyone expected that sort of production to translate perfectly over to Phoenix. But obviously, when you're on the same team as two other the guys, someone has to take a backseat. So.
Well, yeah, the problem is that they're all the same type of the guy. They're both ball dominant, high release, efficient shooters. That have to put up 25 shots a game in order to get 25 points, and it's easier. It's easy to defend one of the guys when you got the same strategy against all of them.
Okay.
I don't have anything.
Sounds good. Okay, over to the Sacramento Kings. Last year, remember they ended the long playoff drought, and I think they finished second in the West last year. Right now they're down in seventh, and they're kind of hanging around that area. Sometimes right before that cutoff line to the play-in, and sometimes like they are now at number 7. So 5-5 in their last 10. What's holding the Kings back from reaching the same pinnacle they did last year?
They're not quite as efficient on offense. They're still great. They're still 8th in offense, 6th in assists, but they were a number 1 last year. Their defense struggles a little bit, so they're not quite the same team. But those were some crazy expectations to try to live up to as the number one offense last year. And so while they're not the same, I'm not quite as worried about them. I think this is a good team. Domantas Sabonis he's a man. He is a fantastic player. If it wasn't for the big Serbian over in Denver, we'd be talking about Sabonis as a game-changing center because he's averaging 20, 13, and 8. I mean, he's also a triple-double machine, and playing a crazy type of basketball that we haven't seen before, except in the last 5 years.
Yeah, good call out. Everyone ends at Jokic, and they don't think who's right behind him, who's doing the same stuff that he is, but on a different scale, or the same scale, but just different team. So, yeah.
So how is Malik Monk being utilized in this off or in this team, and what is the game plan for him?
Yeah, he's kind of the like the Jamal Crawford, Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams kind of thing, where they put him out there for 20 minutes, in a game, and just for like 5-minute spurts, and says, "Hey, go score 10 points real quick." He's just the guy that says, "Hey, go get us a few buckets in a row." Monk has great shooting ability and insane athleticism, and he's a guy that just gets buckets, as many as possible, and then sits down, and then goes out there and gets many buckets and sits down. And so he's being utilized as this guy that just goes out there for spurts at a time to get a lot of points in a short period of time, and it's a really neat place to be in. That unfortunately goes a little unheralded to be such a point getter, to get so good at getting points, but not as the starter.
Yeah, I love the Jamal Crawford comp because that's exactly what he is.
Yeah.
He hasn't started a single game this year. That's not his role. He plays 25 minutes a night right now and scores 15 points a game.
Yeah.
And so that's third best scorer on the team and probably number 6 in minutes. And so the guy just scores whenever he's out there. So great role.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, over to the Southwest Division, the final division in the NBA, starting if with the Dallas Mavericks. um, the one thing I want to mention is what happened. Was it last night, where what's his name? Was it Max Strus hit a three-quarter court shot at the buzzer to win the game,
Yeah.
beating the Mavericks in Dallas and just sending people off in despair. And so that was a crazy shot that he made, and it didn't even hit the backboard. It just shot it from three-quarters court and went straight through the net. So, like, yeah, I could make that if I took 500 shots at it. So yeah.
Yeah. That was definitely a fun way, and that's always fun to see, is just the very improbable win you a game. It happens a few times in a season, and so that's fun to see that happen. So good for them. But yeah, the Mavericks, right? They're on that bubble. They're eighth, 33-25 right now. Luka is obviously MVP caliber. I mean, he's scoring, on average 3 points a game higher than the next person. I mean, he's 34, 9, and 9. He's also close to averaging a triple double, which we know how difficult that is. But they've also had a really good push up to the All-Star break. They had won 6 in a row and are 7-3 in the last 10. And so this is a team that's got a lot of momentum going forward that could climb up the West boards pretty quickly, because the West, it's all very close. I mean, there's less than 8 games that separate the top 8 seeds. Something around there. It's a pretty crazy thing. Obviously, the Mavericks' offense is great. They're 7th in offense, but every other stat is a struggle. They're bottom third in basically every other stat category.
Yeah.
So I think I've got a controversial question for you. So I'm looking at the stats for the Mavericks, and Luka Doncic. So he's obviously the best player on the team, one of the best players in the league. He's leading in 4 of the main stats. So he's leading in points, rebounds, assists, steals. My question is, how good of a team player is he? I assume he's really good, obviously, because if you're going to be the best, you're going to be a good team player. But with him dominating almost all the stats, that speaks to me that he's just dominating the floor. So is he a team player, or is everyone just getting him the ball? What is his team playing like?
I think his team is like, just get him the ball. Like, this is a once in a generational type of player. The kind of players that yeah, absolutely, he's an insane player. And so I think that the reason why they're struggling in some of the other categories is because of that kind of strategy is not quite working out. I saw some commentary in which somebody asked, hey, how do the Mavericks get better? How does Luka become a better basketball player? And Tim Hardaway, fantastic player of the 90s and 2000s, and simply answered, stop dribbling. Pass the ball more. Stop being so ball dominant. Get your teammates more involved, and you'll get the ball back and still be able to get your points. And so, Cody, to your point, yeah, I think that he could involve the team a little more in order to try to be a little bit better. I think Luka is a fantastic teammate and fantastic team player, but right now what's needed for him to win games is to get out of the way.
Yeah. It's funny that Tim Hardaway said that because his son is on the team. Says,
Yeah,
give
I
the
think
ball to
that's
my
why.
son.
I
So,
think that's why he said that.
yeah. So, okay. Over to the Houston Rockets. They had spent the last few years at the very bottom of the West. They're still not too far from the bottom, but I mean, their record looks better than it did. They've already won more games this year than they won all last year. So, I mean, that's progress in the right direction. Fred Van Vliet is showing that he's just the every bit the player that they hoped he was coming from the Raptors. And so, is this a team headed in the right direction, or is being 12th in the West still not good enough for the current year?
This team has a lot of potential. I'm not all that worried. I think they just need to be patient a couple more years. They're very young and have a lot of potential. Then a comment on best players on the team. Cody, I don't know if you've started looking up stats for the Rockets, but I was going to say if you haven't yet, if you can name the leading scorer on this team, I'll give you $20.
No, I looked it up already, unfortunately, but
Yeah, you can pronounce it.
Pronounce his name, yes.
let's see here. It's Sengun. Let's see here. Al.
Yeah, Alperen
Al
Sengun.
oh, I got it right. Sengun. Okay,
Yep,
Alperen
Alperen
Sengun.
Sengun. He's a Turkish player. He's the leading scorer, and he is quite good. He's fun to watch because he's this very wiry European style of play. Yeah, he's good. He's interesting to watch, and he's a great two-way player.
It's funny because my question was going to be, that the only person I recognize on this team is Dylan Brooks. That's the only name I recognize. Other than that, who should I look out for? But you just answered that. What was that? Alfred Sengun or something?
Alperen Sengun.
Okay,
And then Fred Van Vliet is the other
Fred
one.
Van Vliet. Yeah.
Fred VanVleet. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Wichita State guy. He was the reason, like when Wichita State had their huge runs and was doing fantastic. He was the guy on that team that was
On
doing
all
that.
of them, all of the
Yeah,
teams. I think he was there for 4 years.
yeah.
Okay. The Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously, the whole season has been marred by first Ja Morant's suspension and second Ja Morant's season-ending injury. So I think he played a total of 6 games this season, and the Grizzlies are completely out of it. There's really no hope. I mean, they've won 20 games all year so far. They've gone 2-8 in their last 10, but Dustin, is there light at the end of the tunnel, considering the talent this team has, and they now could get a top draft pick along with it?
Yeah, that would be the light at the end of the tunnel is come draft season. But yeah, this season they've really shot themselves in their foot, if I can use that. But yeah, they've lost like 9 out of the last 11 games. Just not doing well. And the problem is they're 30th in offense. I mean, they're last in the league in generating points. And we've talked about it before. You can't just say, "Hey, Ja Morant, come in and save us." Not only because of the risk of injury, but you can't do a one man band. We just talked about that with Dallas. Is one man band maybe works if you're the best player on the planet, but it still gets you to halfway up the leaderboard at best. And they definitely have relied on Jaws the savior too much. I do want to call out Desmond Bain has really stepped up and filled that points thing. Again, they're still 30th in offense, but he's kind of an unexpected superstar.
So, Ja Morant, at what point? So he's had issues, off the court issues, as we know. At what point, or how do I say this? So going into next season, how many more times can they tolerate his behavior if he keeps doing that before they say we can't have you on our franchise anymore? We're going to cut you because this is the best player on their team. So is that even a consideration for the franchise? What do you think?
He hasn't had problems this year yet.
Yeah, I would remember that putting this guy on a pedestal is a bad idea. That he's 22 years old. I mean, this is slightly more than a child, and punishing him in the 2 generations back kind of way of grounding him forever. Like we know what happens when you do that to basically teenagers, super rebellion, and that's happened to other athletes, and there's unfortunately millions and millions of children that have rebelled against that kind of discipline. And I don't want to insult him and calling him a child, or that he's acting like a child and things like that, because yeah, he is, but he is in his early 20s, and you handed a 20-year-old kid $50 million, and choices came with it. And I think that ownership and friendship and all of that needs to be patient with him, and they've given him the tools and the resources to grow through that. And he's showing progress. He's growing through it. And so I would say that should be celebrated, and not dismissed out of hand. That should be celebrated, that he is in a really tough position and he's shown growth.
Yeah, I like that answer. I think, I mean, in any business, I mean, you've got to understand that basketball, just like football, it's a job, it's a business, it's a work environment, right? And you don't want I mean, you mess up, and you can call John Morant on the, what do they call it today? The performance plan, right? At your job, if he could be on something like that, and you don't want to, as an employee, if you're working, you don't always want to be reminded of the mistake that you made.
No.
That's not a good work environment. In any case, it's not okay. Yeah, you did this good thing for us. You scored 20 points, but remember 2 years ago when you were an idiot. uh, and things like that. So it's a job, it's a work environment. And you want to be celebrated for the successes you make. That helps you feel better. That helps you grow in your role. That helps you grow as a human being. And so I think unfortunately, for a lot of these cases, having a job in the NBA is a public job. Otherwise, no one would know about this, right? And so, uh, so unfortunately, he has to go through some of this uh, rehabilitation in the public eye, and that's that's unfortunate. But as the employer, you would hope that they would have they would praise him in public, and really help him to realize the value he has, rather than keep tearing him down for mistakes he made.
Absolutely. That's a great comment.
Yeah. Okay. The New Orleans Pelicans, second to last team. Remember, we've talked for, it seems like, every year about Zion Williamson not being available, about him being injured, about him not wanting to play unless he's 100%. Well, he's played almost every game this year, and the results have shown they're fifth in the West. They look like a very big team. Zion Williamson looks as good as advertised, and he's finally playing the minutes that he's supposed to be playing, and it's showing.
Yeah. It took a long time for his body to catch up to be healthy. And he is absolutely, I mean, like, unicorn isn't the right word, because he's like a rhinoceros. It's this is I mean, to put it in football terms, this is the guy that's the size of an offensive lineman that runs faster than running backs. I mean, this is an absolute monster of a human being. I mean, he's 6'5", 285 pounds, and is the fastest, most athletic guy in the court. It's incredible, his athleticism and body size. And so I'm glad that he's being healthy, and yeah, we see what he's doing. And these big three of McCollum, Williamson, and just blanked on
Valanciunas?
not
Is he still there?
Yeah, he's still there, but no, the small forward, I'm just blanking on his name. Anyway, he played for the Lakers for a while now. He's been on Pelicans, and he's been an all-star.
Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, Brandon Ingram. Thank you. Yeah, those big three are dangerous. They're top. This team is top half in all categories. But my most favorite player to watch on the team, and probably most favorite player to watch in the whole NBA, is Jose Alvarado on the Pelicans. He is an absolute dog. He loves to play defense. That's why he's there, is to play defense. If you get to watch a Pelicans game, Jose Alvarado is my favorite player to watch right now in the league, because he is the most annoying defender in the whole world. and he's so good at it. And you can see in his stats, he's playing less than 20 minutes a game, but he's a +4 differential, +4 points, +3.8. I mean, when he's on the court, he is absolutely affecting the game. If you want to talk about players who are affecting the game outside of stats, Jose Alvarado is the top of the list. He is so fun to watch because he's so good.
I love that commentary. Yeah. Finding those guys that impact the game in other ways other than even stats. So, yeah.
I think I actually just have a comment on this one. The thing I noticed is that with the main 5 stats, there's 4 different people leading those stats, which shows to me again the opposite of what the Mavericks are experiencing. It's that teamwork, and so that speaks to me. That is where the success is their communication, their ability to pass the ball and work as a team.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that the Pelicans can make a deep playoff run. You know, to win at least one series, hopefully 2 series, and it'll cement ownership that this is the team to stick with. Don't break it up. Like, keep going, and you can win a championship with this core.
Yeah, they'll be fun to watch in a couple months here. They're fun to watch now, but they'll be fun to watch in a couple months too.
Yeah.
Okay, last team in this midseason report. We started this whole thing a few weeks ago with the top team in the East. We now finish with the bottom team in the West. That feels like a nice little circle here. The San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, Greg Popovich still there. He's won 5 championships, but he's coaching a team with very little talent outside of their number 1 overall pick, Victor Wembanyama, who's in some cases showing why he was the number 1 pick, in other cases showing why he's a rookie. But 1-9 in their last 10. They've won 11 games total this season. What I want to send you to talk about, Dustin, is when is Popovich calling it quits here? Because I mean, everyone would love to go out on a high note, but it doesn't seem like that's in San Antonio's immediate future. So.
Yeah, it's hard to comment on Popovich. I mean, this team is obviously not the same pop machine. It's not the pop machine here. Except the team is second in assists, right? So they're doing some things right, but not all of it. They're just too young and too rough. As far as when he'll call it quits, I don't know. He may stay around forever. I mean, if I remember right, Greg Popovich, his wife passed away a few years ago, and you know he's continuing playing through that. And so I don't know what phase in life is going to tell him that he's done, and it might be death for him is when he tells him he's done. You know, but to comment on Wemby is this. I got to eat crow, and that I was wrong. I thought Wemby would be a total bust, and he's not. He's absolutely one of the top players that's going to be in the future of this league. I mean, he's right now averaging 20, 10, and 3, and he has the same. He's averaging the assists and blocks are equal in what he's averaging. I mean, he's the league leader in blocks, 3 blocks a game, 3 assists a game. I mean, that's a crazy stat to have that. But yeah, he's absolutely the future, and I eat crow and saying I was wrong. He's definitely showing lots of rookie moments, but he's the real deal.
I think all of us eat crow because all of us wondered about his potential. I mean, obviously, when he played against Joel Embiid, he got bullied down in the paint, and that was our concern with him. But offensively and even defensively on those blocks, because he has the wingspan of a albatross, but like he impacts the game in a lot of good ways, and yeah, I like him for the future of that team, and helps when you're 7'5". Is that how big it is? 7'4", 7'5", something like
7'3"
that?
and a half or something like
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
It says he's 7'4", and that was something I forgot was his height. I looked at that, and guys, I don't know if you saw it, but I just had huge eyes looking at that. 7'4", 210 pounds. So he's a little stick, but well, not a little stick, but a giant stick. But the first thing I thought of was in Space Jam, the Monstars when they're playing, they just hold the ball up and just walk down the court, and no one can grab it. That's just what I'm imagining. He just grabs the ball and just Here, come get it. you know,
Yeah,
so
and that monster in Space Jam was based off of Sean Bradley. He was a
Bradley,
similar
7'6".
height, but Sean Bradley had the athleticism of a boulder. I mean, he just wasn't
Yeah.
athletic, and Wemby is incredibly athletic. I mean, and he's coordinated. He can take the ball from end to end. He can go all 90 feet, dribbling between his legs around the back, making passes, finishing at the hoop. Wemby is definitely the type of talent that is shaping the future of the NBA.
Yeah, great. Okay, that concludes our NBA midseason review. Obviously, we'll talk about the NBA almost every week going forward, going into the postseason as well in about what is it, 9 weeks ish, 7 weeks even. So we'll talk about that as they go forward. In the last couple of minutes, just wanted to mention NCAA basketball. Obviously, March Madness is coming up, I think in 2 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. Is a March Madness will be here, and so we'll talk a lot more in depth at that point. But anyone wants to talk about right now as being an important thing to watch for college basketball. The one thing I'll mention is last night's game. Uh, you might be wearing a red shirt, Cody, but I need to talk about BYU last night. They
Yeah.
beat Kansas in Lawrence last night, breaking Kansas's 82 game home winning streak. And so BYU has been ranked most of the season. They weren't this last poll. They fell out of the rankings, but beating Kansas and Lawrence and combined with their record, BYU is a lock for the tournament. But
Yeah.
so, and that whole Big 12, I think out of those 16 teams, I think we're expecting 11 or 12 to make the tournament. It's a crazy league, and you added BYU and Houston, obviously being a big team into the Big 12, and both of those teams will make it along with about 3/4 of the rest of them. So, anyone else want to talk about teams or things to watch or anything?
Yeah, I was going to mention, Kansas is obviously a great team, and the loss that they suffered, but they're still going to be,
Yeah.
a top team and a top favorite. But then some of the original blue bloods are still going to be there. I think Tennessee's having a great season as well, and so it'd be interesting to see that. Houston is always there.
I think the only this is coming from a Utah fan. The only thing I want to say, they're not in the tournament or anything right now, but I'm proud of the Utes basketball team because they've been doing a lot better this year. They had somewhere around 20 wins, and so they were doing really well. They were in the bubble picture for a little bit, and that was impressive with Carlson leading the way. But obviously, they lost like 7 of the last 9 games, so they fell out of it. But I just want to, as a fan of the Utes, I'm proud of the basketball team for making some changes there. But other than that, the Big 12 conference is a monster when it comes to basketball, and I'm sure we'll talk about this another day. But because of that, the Big 12 has some say now, I think, when it comes to conference realignment.
Uh, yeah, I mean Houston right now is the number one team in college basketball out of the Big 12, and Kansas will drop. I don't know if they'll drop out of the top 10, but they'll drop a little bit. They're at 7 right now, and then you got to add Baylor is number 15. BYU also beat Baylor this year, by the way, but Baylor is 15. Um, and then I think those are the teams out of the Big 12 in the current top 25. BYU will be there next week. They'll put them back in. Texas Tech would be there next week. BYU plays TCU this week, and both are in the top. They're both receiving votes, and so it's a big conference to watch. And then obviously the Big Ten is always going to be big. Purdue is number 2 right now as well. Um, Wisconsin's always good, and then SEC is putting a lot of teams in as well. Um, you're at Tennessee, like you said, Dustin. Tennessee's 4th, um, and Alabama's 14th. Kentucky's 16th. South Carolina's in there, and Florida's in there. And then finally, with your Pac-12 or uh, you know the dying conference, Arizona's going to be in the Big 12 next year, but they're 6th right now out of the Pac-12. So, and then you got the 2 blue bloods, North Carolina and Duke, with new coaches essentially right there in the top 10 too. So Yeah, we will talk a lot about the March Madness as we get closer. I think the next 2 weeks we'll talk a little bit about NBA, but we're going to at least next week, depending on how quickly we do it, do a full NFL season review. Uh, we haven't really done an autopsy, if I could say it that way, of what the NFL season looked like. Specifically, looking at okay, here's how they did this year. What is one off-season move we want to see these guys make, or something like that as we go into next week. And so that will be most of our week next week, and depending on how long it takes, could be the week after as well before we hit into March Madness. But any last thoughts from either one of you?
I don't
Okay.
think so. This has been a good NBA season, mid-season review, and the NBA's heating up. It's exciting. You got basically 6 weeks to the playoff start, and so this is the final NBA push for a lot of teams. The Western Conference is going to be super exciting to watch because those top 8 teams are basically within 8 games of each other. I mean, this is everything can change from a night-to-night basis in the West.
Yeah. Sounds great. Okay. We will talk to you all next week and have all 4 of us here next week. So see ya.